Welcome to Dental Business RX. Practice success in 30 minutes or less.
Thank you for calling ABC Dental.
Funny thing, people are always looking for that next big or new idea that's going to change their lives, businesses, or careers. And I'm all for new things. I think they're cool, but I say it's funny because if you dig deeper in many of these cases, you'll find that the problem or problems that someone who's searching for these new things have are well within their reach with what they already have to solve. They don't need a new or a big idea. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to a doctor who is convinced they need a new location or they need to change their marketing or something along these lines. And then you start asking questions about their current practice and you find out they have 5,000 charts that are just inactive or their schedule's empty half the time. In other words, they're picking the wrong solution to the problem. They don't need a new thing or a new idea. They need to do what it is that they're already supposed to be doing. Or somebody wants more new patients. They're looking for the magic solutions. So you ask, are they asking for referrals? Do they have a basic thing? Is their website put together correctly? A basic website, I was about to say. Because a lot of websites tend to be more informational as opposed to, who are you putting your website up for? It's not your patients. You're putting it up for prospective new patients. Is there any marketing on the site? Should they do SEO? No, they don't want to do that. They want to put ads on the back of, Walgreens receipts. That's the new cool idea that's going to get 1 million new patients. You'll also see it where, especially in dentistry, where you'll have someone become intensely interested in new equipment or learning new procedures. And again, I am all for that, especially when it's, better ways to take care of your patients. But then in some cases, you'll see someone in this boat and you look at their practice. Their hygiene's terrible with tons of opening. Their schedule has a ton of openings on it. Their case acceptance isn't very good, and they have staff problems. So while I agree that in those cases where the doctor is looking for learning a new procedure, they've identified a need. Your patients may need implants and you can't place them and you're referring them out. I agree that that's a need. But the person's ignoring the fundamentals. Their schedule's already empty. They can't sell what they already can do. How are they going to sell implants? And this brings me to the subject of this week's episode, which is consistency, being able to do things well consistently, being the key to success, and a little bit on how to avoid FOMO. You've probably heard that term before, FOMO, the fear of missing out. My name is Jeff Blumberg, and I'm your host. And if you've been listening for a while, I'm going to tell you a little bit of a secret. It's not really a secret, but it's something that I haven't ever said before. So when we started this podcast out, I didn't want it to be one of these things where I just brought people on and interviewed them about whatever. I do some interviews, but I mainly wanted to share practice management tips that we teach our clients. It wasn't a sales thing. Sure, I jokingly have my shameless plugs, but I'm giving you real information, and I'm not saying this in a flex kind of way. It's true. We give you real information. It's completely usable information, and the reason why we do that, as opposed to it just being a sort of lost leader salesy type thing, was years back. My son is in the marketing space. He does very well in the marketing space. But I was talking to him and a guy he works with, or a guy one of his mentors actually, who had taught him a lot. And this fellow is a very, very, very successful guy in the marketing space. He's worked with a lot of Fortune 500 companies. And we were talking about content. And what this fellow said is he puts out probably, 50% of what he charges people for free, the content he puts out. In other words, he'll tell you, this is how you do it. It's just most people can't, and then they hire him to, show them how to do it. So I wanted to take the same approach. I'm going to tell you exactly what I tell a client. This is how you set up your front desk. This is how you do this. This is how you get out of plans within the constraints of a half-hour episode. And obviously, our course, we have hundreds of hours of training. I can't condense that into a podcast. But in other words, it wasn't going to just be a bunch of, little bit of teensy bits of ideas to get you to buy something. It was actually full information. And I've heard from lots of people, again, not a flex, who've said, hey, I did what, I learned in this podcast about presenting treatment and, I'm doing better, which I think is awesome. That's kind of what this is all about. But the point being is you'll notice a lot of what I talk about is pretty basic stuff. Your hygiene area or case acceptance or how to handle new patient phone calls or how to not blow all your money on useless marketing that isn't working or making your marketing work. I'm not talking about rocket science or super, newfangled ways to use AI in your practice. I think I did do one episode on that, which the response from that was hilarious on social media because they thought I was talking about replacing staff, which I wasn't. But the point being is if you applied a lot of what we've covered in this podcast, you would see benefits in your practice. Again, that's not hubris, but because these are fundamentals, and this is usually what is out in most offices. Like if you look at the basic structure of a dental practice, like what does it do? Let's say a GP practice. So you do dental services, needed dental services, obviously within the framework of what a patient is willing to do, accept, and pay for. And you keep these patients coming back through your hygiene department and keep their oral health in good condition. And you keep them coming back regularly so that you can see them regularly to monitor their oral health and move further towards restoring their health, function, and aesthetic. And you have a group of staff that do various functions to support that. That sort of the guts of the office is dentistry and the hygiene department. That's the guts of the office and all the other positions. And some people don't think this way sometimes. Why do you have a scheduler? So you can do more efficient dentistry. Or your hygiene schedule's full. Why do you have a receptionist? So you can answer the phone to get patients in to do more efficient dentistry, right? Or to do more dentistry. Why would you have a new patient coordinator? Same reason. It all revolves on the doing of dentistry and even hygiene to that degree. That's the whole idea of a dental practice. It's actually painfully simple. So if you take any of these things, hygiene, sales, customer service, good staff with a proper division of labor so you don't have somebody super overloaded and somebody who's not doing much of anything, good retention, collecting what you're supposed to collect and ideally getting out a plan so you can charge a fair fee. If you just do those things and you do them consistently and you do them well, you will be successful. And, doing hygiene, by that I mean you have a full hygiene schedule where you're retaining most of your patients and your marketing's working, so therefore your practice is growing. Like if you're doing these things consistently, you will do well. And that's where the whole concept here of consistency being the key to success really comes into play, because this is where, you may have a confusion as to where to start if you have a lot of problems, right? Which is fine. This is where sometimes an outside viewpoint like ours, like here at MGE, can help. Like, hey, here's where you need to start, right? But these things are not rocket science. But I think what happens is people either don't see them or they can't think with the solution to them, or the solution that they have to them is not adequate to the actual problem. So let's say you've got 4,000 charts and you've got 3 days of hygiene. If you have 4,000 charts, you should have far more than 3 days of hygiene. You should have closer to 12 full days of hygiene a week. And that's that's only retaining 60% of your patients, right? So someone will see this and they don't, they look at that and they tell the staff, hey, we need to get more people in for hygiene. They're not actually looking at what is it really going to take in the real physical universe to reach all of those people, like how many phone calls are going to be required, how much labor is going to be required, et cetera, in order to get these patients back. And who am I going to have to put on the phone to make sure that they actually reach out to people and are effective when they reach out to them? I can't just put somebody on the phone who doesn't like talking to people. And then I'm probably going to have to work with that person a little bit to make sure, whether I'm the doctor or the office manager, to make sure that when they're calling, they properly represent the practice and are able to answer questions. These aren't all very difficult, but it's sort of like you're not looking at what's it really going to take to solve this problem. Now, here's the silly thing. What I just said was not huge and revelatory. You could figure that out in 5 minutes, but it takes actually looking at it and thinking with what would it really take to solve this problem. Like, let's say your new patient conversion is terrible. And this is something that you should know, especially if you're spending money on marketing, because if you spend a lot of money on marketing, every one of those phone calls are costing you money. So then you maybe listen to a few phone calls and you notice that, 20, 25% of the patients are converting. The rest are not scheduling in your practice. So you look at this and you could do one of a couple things. You could go, oh, well, the patients in my area are bad, which is false. Or you could go, okay, I need to improve my receptionist's ability to convert new patient phone calls. So number one is, let's say you're the manager and you know how to do it. Well, then you could train the person. Let's say you don't know how to do it. Well, then you can get some information that's helpful. I'll put a link. We have an ebook on this, on reception skills or phone skills. I'll put the ebook up there. It's also on our online platform. We have a whole video on this, phone skills on DDS success. We've done podcasts on phone skills. It's not that difficult. But you're taking me, who, let's say I'm your receptionist, and I don't have those skills. Well, you can't just have me read a piece of paper and hope that I'm going to do it. You're going to have to actually work with me to make sure that I can actually do it. That might be practicing that, I'm the receptionist and you're being the patient. I'm having to handle you till I become really expert at it. It takes work. That's the actual effort involved in getting these basic fundamental things in your practice. But the reward on just handling something like this, I've seen this. This is something I've seen play out again and again and again. Someone is averaging a 25% conversion rate. They work with their receptionist. Now they're averaging 50 to 60%. That's a 20 plus new patient per month swing based on the number of phone calls the practice was getting. Okay? And they spent nothing other than an hour and a half of working with their receptionist. But that isn't how a lot of offices do training. What do? They hire a new employee, they show them around the office where their cubby is, and then they give them the manual and say, read the manual. I mean, did you go to dental school and they just handed you a book and said, read the book, good, you're a dentist now? No, you had a lot of practical application. You asked questions, you had clinic. That's how this works. And I'm not trying to compare scheduling new patients to being a dentist, but they're both skills. Obviously, one's a doctorate, but you could get somebody to where they're at least skilled enough to where on a consistent basis they can handle new patient calls, because that's really the key, being consistent. There's I forget what book this was. It was an Anthony Bourdain book. It was Kitchen Confidential, and he was talking about how you get these people and they'll put on a dinner party, or they put on the best dinner parties, and all their friends say they should open a restaurant. He knew a few people like this, and they always failed. Because of two reasons. They'd open the restaurant and, they like doing a dinner party because they could make something different every time. Well, that's not the restaurant business. The restaurant business is you're making that T-bone steak the same every single time, maybe with a variance in temperature. Every dish is exactly the same. That's what a person's expecting. Think of yourself for a second as a consumer. If you go to a restaurant, you order something, someplace you've been before, and you order the same thing, you want it to taste like it tasted last time. If it's drastically different or horrible, that sours you on the restaurant. So it's not a matter of can a person do something, it's can they do it consistently. Sure, your new patient handled that one person, or your receptionist rather handled that one new patient really well, but can they do that across the boards on a consistent basis? Is your hygiene scheduled full consistently? Are you consistently getting rid of your inactive patients? You see, if this is something you're doing, or your treatment acceptance line, do you have it properly set up so that every patient flowing through it is handled consistently every single time? Because these lack of consistent handlings is what adds up to an unsuccessful business. Like my wife went to an ENT recently, right? She had like swimmer's ear or something like this. So she goes in, and we really like the doctor. He's a great guy. We've seen this guy off and on for like 10 years. And she's supposed to get a prescription, right? And she's supposed to, like some kind of eardrop, and she's supposed to get some type of test, right? So they don't schedule the test and they don't call in her prescription. So how did that leave her feeling about the practice? You get my point. If you do these things consistently, you can have dependable growth. If you don't do these things consistently, the basic things in your business, then you're going to have trouble. Then you can't figure out what's going wrong or why. And then the solution becomes some new thing out there when you're not doing what it is that you should already be doing. Like, again, I don't know how many doctors I've seen who have done all kinds of clinical training, and they don't do it because they can't get patients to accept it. Not because they don't want to, but patients don't want to do it, or they don't do it as frequently as they would like. Or they go out and buy cone beams, or they buy Syrinx. We've talked about this before, and they don't use them because they can't sell the procedures associated with them. So this is where you have to evaluate for yourself. You go, okay, I have a dental business. I'm getting patients in, and I'm supposed to be doing their dental treatment, and they have to agree to it first. And gosh, I've presented like $300,000 worth of treatment here, and I've only gotten about 25,000 accepted, or 50,000 accepted. That's pretty bad. Maybe I need to change the way I'm doing that. And then you pull that apart. Again, I've gone over that on the podcast before too. Again, I'm not flexing on this point. I'm just making a point. And you go, okay, do I have time? Do I have the proper skill set? If you don't have the proper skill set, you need to learn how to sell. This is why we have things like, this is my shameless plug, the sales and communication seminars here at MGE. I'll put a link to it. We also go over this a bit on DDS Success. And we have that coupon code RX269 if you want to use it, where you can save some money on DDS Success. All right, that's my sales pitch. But the point being is, before you go looking out there for what's wrong, and everybody, and I'm not trying to say that you're not unique. We're all unique in our own special ways, okay? But very rarely do I run into a truly unique situation in a dental practice. We all think our problems are unique, but they're not. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. It's actually good. They're all solvable. And the problem is usually very easy to solve, and that may sound like I'm being a jerk when I say that, but I promise you it is not difficult to solve. And in 90% of cases, it's just the basic functions of the business that aren't being done. So if you're having trouble or you want to be more successful, where I would start is by looking inward. Are the basic things that your business is supposed to do being done? Not the newfangled cool stuff, but the basic things. When patients leave, do they always get scheduled for their next hygiene appointment? If that's only happening 50% of the time, that's not just a small problem. That's a wailing siren that you need to address immediately. You need to go look at why and sort that out. And you need to work with your team until it's being done on a consistent basis. Does every new patient that comes in after they get the exam or get their exam and they have extensive treatment, do you have adequate time to present that treatment plan? Is that worked into your schedule? If it's not, you need to work it into your schedule. And then you need to keep working on it and working on it and working on it until it's being done 100% of the time. A funny thing about service businesses, or I guess you could say procedures generally in a lot of businesses. And I think I've mentioned this before, but let's say you want to introduce a morning production meeting. You want a meeting with your key people and go over what's happening in the practice today. Let's say this is something you want to introduce. And let's say you start patients at 8 o'clock and you want this production meeting at 7:40 sharp every morning. Okay. So you do it the first day, and then you're late the second day, and then the third day you tell everybody, I scheduled a patient early, so I can't do it. And then the weekends, and then no one's really thinking with doing it at 7:40 on Monday morning. The next week. They're just not thinking of that because you haven't actually done it so consistently that people expect to do it. If you did a morning meeting at 7:40 every morning and you did it consistently for 5 years, and then you canceled the meeting one morning, you would still see staff show up to your office or wherever you held the meeting with their clipboards or whatever they carry, their tablets, ready to do the meeting because they're more used to doing the meeting than not doing the meeting. I guess that would be the way I would say this. You want to get your team used to doing it the right way, or more used to doing it the right way than they are used to doing it the wrong way. And how that's accomplished is by consistency. If you want more referrals, or let's say you have referral cards, let's say, right? And you want your staff to hand these out to patients, let's say. We have a program like this called the Care to Share program. I'll put a download for it on the episode webpage. It's free. But let's say you have one of these things and you want your staff to hand these things out. All right, well, you brief everybody at staff meeting, and then you don't really say anything much. In the next staff meeting, you ask, who handed them out? And nobody handed them out. You do it the next week, people have just forgotten about it. Versus, let's say you go over it at staff meeting, you have everybody practice for 20 minutes until they're completely comfortable doing it. You answer all of their questions as far as how the whole thing works, and then you send them off to do it. At the end of the day, you check to see who did it, who didn't do it when they should have, and why didn't they. And then you sort out whatever reason they didn't so that they do it the next day. You make them accountable for it. You'll find that program will actually get implemented. You're constantly pushing. And at the next staff meeting, you go over the successes you had as a result of it. Right? What's great about those referral cards, it's basically a card, person signs and they give a friend, and then their friend comes in and they get some kind of a discount in your practice, $50 off or something. I mean, those new patients basically cost you nothing. They cost you the price of a business card. It's the easiest thing. It's like falling off a log. But the point being is you have to have it done a certain way. You want a conversation. You want the person to hand it to somebody. And if it's, let's say you did that every week, you kept checking on it. Then maybe you're not checking on it every day. Now you're checking on it weekly. Eventually people are just going to be used to doing it. People will notice when people don't do it. Like some staff member sees another staff member didn't do it and goes, don't forget to give them their card. That's how you build up a system. And you could do that for whether it's how they answer the phones, meetings, keeping the hygiene schedule full of reactivation. You have to put these systems in and you have to follow up on them consistently so that people perform them consistently. You want them more used to doing it the right way than they are to doing it the wrong way. And if the wrong way is the way it's currently being done, you have to have some way, rather, of training them out of it. And as well as it takes, having a hard look at yourself from time to time. If you're not being successful with what it is that you're trying to do, there's all kinds of justifications that you can, the economy, this, my location, etc. Or you could look at it and go, well, maybe I'm just not doing this right. Maybe there's something I should be doing different. And have you exhausted all those ways before you decide that it's just completely impossible and there's no way to sort that out, right? So I guess that's my message. I wanted to keep it short. Have a holiday week here. We just had the 4th this week. And you'll be getting this on Monday after the 4th, and you'll probably be busy walking into the practice. The point being is if you want to sort things out in your office, before you go looking for the newfangled thing, make sure you're doing what it is that you're already supposed to do. Because if you're not, you're building on a very, very shaky foundation. I hope this helps, folks. I've got those links on the episode webpage to DDS Success, the MGE Communication and Sales Seminars, as well as that Care to Share program, that referral program that I mentioned a little bit earlier. And if you want to find out more about MGE, you can find us online at mgeonline.com or call us at 800-640-1140. Folks, have a great week, and we'll see you at the next episode.